A street vendor distributes goods from a cart or station at a pedestrian crossing. The primary goal of a vendor is to make money by selling products that people require or desire. Some street vendors bring food to their families and pay their children's school fees as their primary source of income. They also make sure that eyes on the street are present, helping people feel safer and more at ease on the street. That's why the researchers from 11 ABMC and 11 GASB choose to deal with this topic to help and pay attention to the street vendors in the Poblacion Kalumpit, Bulacan who need to sustain their daily needs for their families. This research summarizes recent research and evidence on urban policies and local government. Practices related street vending, one of the most conspicuous informal economic jobs. It shows how generic COVID-19 pandemic influenced street sellers' income, assets, and time. Research comes from an inquiry or a problem. With that, here is a statement of the problem that I will be discussed. For the general of the problem, here is analyzing the effect of this pandemic to the street vendors in Poblacion Kalumpit, Bulacan, and together with the three specific questions that is related to our general problem. 1. What are the effects of this pandemic on the street vendors? According to the street vendors, their sales dropped more than before the pandemic. 2. How does the vendors' livelihood affect their families? According to the street vendors, they are more difficult now with the pandemic because there is not much help and also have no income. 3. What are the strategies that vendors should do to supply their needs and to maintain their business? According to the street vendors, they use social media so that they can sell their product faster and so that others can also see what they're selling. The significance of the study in our research. To make sure this isn't a personal study, here are the people who will benefit from it. First is the vendors will give chance to be heard and pay attention. Second is the family of the vendors will receive a primary source of income for their households, foods, and other fees. Third is the student buyers will be able to buy a low and affordable price from the street vendors. Fourth is the economy will reduce the cost of living urban cities. Fifth is the researcher will have awareness about perspective of the street vendors who is affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Lastly, are the future researchers who would like to study the influence of COVID-19 pandemic to the street vendors. For our research boundaries, here is a scope of the limitations. The main goal is to know the influence of the COVID-19 pandemic to the street vendors. This will be done through the lens of the street vendors from Poblacion Kalumpit, Bulacan and will only be limited to 13 respondents through random sampling. Our research will not include the vendors from various places. According to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, they provided us with a definition for each term. Buyer, a person who has charge of the selection, purchasing, pricing, and display of the merchandise of a retail store. COVID-19 is a coronavirus severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2 of the genus Beta. Coronavirus causes mild severe respiratory illness that is transmitted primarily through contact with infectious materials such as respiratory droplets or objects or surfaces contaminated by causative virus and is characterized by fever, cough, and shortness breath and can progress pneumonia and respiratory failure. Pandemic, affecting a large section of the population occurring over a large geographic area such as many countries or continents. Street foods, prepared food of kind that is typically sold to customers on a street or sidewalk and that is often designed to be carried and eaten while walking. Street vendors, a person who sells something in the street, either from a stall or a van or with their goods laid out on the sidewalk. Foreign literature. WeGo gathers the monitor street vendors' news coverage around the world in 4 languages. In general, the data suggests that exclusion policies, regulation, and practices are common. One extreme is the largest scale, violent dismissal in less severe cases. Same or all traders were relocated. But the less favorable areas with low foot traffic or indicate amenities. Local literature, academic research on street vending is common because it presents the intriguing combination of public space, economic activity, and temporality. Street selling is typically not done in the same way as a professional commerce, but rather as a seasonal or occasional source of income for families. It can be fixed in space, movable, moving from space to face, or continuously mobile, providing value service to the urban poor. To conceptualize the study better, we use input process output scheme type of a format so we can better understand the flow of our research. It has input where the researchers will take the profiles of the respondents, street vendors such as their age, gender that will be used to determine who is more affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. It also contains a source of information where the literature and related studies, the process that the researchers will use in gathering the data needed for the study in survey through in-person interview using video recorded, and the output that indicates the desired result of the study, which is the influence of COVID-19 pandemic among street vendors in Poblacion Calumpit, Bulacan. For our research method, we use descriptive research method to learn how the epidemic has affected street vendors, businesses, and what benefits the pandemic has brought. For our population and samples, we use random sampling method to conduct interviews with the certain street vendors who operated various types of business near the street for our population and sample. And for our population or participants of the study, we included 13 street vendors in Poblacion Calumpit, Bulacan as a part of our studies participants. Street vendors, market traders, and market workers provide important goods and services, especially to those who need to buy small quantities of necessities at inexpensive prices. Fresh and prepared food sellers play a significant role in urban supply networks. This chapter presents the researchers' data for the study as well as their analysis and interpretation based on the challenges described in Chapter 1. These answers to the question are found in Chapter 1. This chapter contains the answer to the questions 1. How's your business life before the pandemic? 2. How did the pandemic affect your business? 3. What is the big change you are experiencing now, pandemic? 4. How hard it is for you to sell when your customer isn't buying too much food because of the COVID? 5. What are the strategies that you apply to maintain your business? 1. How's your business life before the pandemic? According to our research's results, 100 of the respondents indicate their lives and businesses are well before the pandemic. 2. How did the pandemic affect your business? According to our researchers' results, the pandemic had a severe impact on their business because no one could go outdoors during lockdown, causing them to become homeless. 3. What is the big change you are experiencing now, pandemic? According to our researchers' results, in this pandemic, all the respondents said they are having problems selling their products since no one is buying them. And if what they have is expensive, they are having trouble selling it, they will be not permitted to sell what they are selling since it is not necessary. 4. What is the big change you are experiencing now, pandemic? According to our researchers' results, vendor faced twice as many challenges in this pandemic as they did earlier questions. They said that they used some techniques to keep consumers, such as posting pictures of their goods on the internet and ensuring that the food they serve is clean. 5. What is the strategies that you apply to maintain your business? According to the study results, posting the goods for sale online is one of the most effective ways for respondents to promote them. For the summary, this study was conducted to investigate the situation of the street vendors in recent pandemics in Poblacion Calumpit, Bulacan, and this chapter contains the findings of the researchers from the data gathered in the previous chapter. 1. Many of them say that the income is good before the pandemic compared to today, and that's true because without the pandemic, there are no protocols followed and people are not afraid to go out or go on the road because there is no threatening virus. 2. Other street vendors are trying to get new business out of their pandemic income reduction so they can still support their families. 3. All the street vendors had their business collapse and close due to the loss of their customers and other consumers caused by the pandemic. Based on the findings of the study, the following conclusions are drawn. 1. Street vendors are all turned the pandemic into a big nightmare because it became harder for them to earn money. 2. Street vendors were one of the most ignored during the pandemic, so the lockdown was more difficult. 3. Street vendors say that not all their customers trust the cleanliness and the quality of their goods, making them difficult for them to recoup their prior earnings. For the vendors, the researchers advise street sellers to keep the food they sell clean as well as maintain a clean environment to persuade and gain trust from the customers. Also, remember to follow the safety health protocols for the sake of the customers and street vendors' safety. For the family of the vendors, the researchers advise the vendors' families to cooperate and help encourage customers to buy their products. Also, due to COVID-19 pandemic, they should consider starting a new trendy and timely business. For the students buyer, the researchers advise buyers to help and support the local business such as small businesses and street vendors to help them recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. For the future researchers, the researchers of the study encourage future researchers to broaden and extend their studies. They aim to use the findings or these studies to close the current knowledge gap and deliver considerably more information to students. As a result, the analysis findings would be trusted by the public and readers of the other nationalities.